aviation fuel to go and give a rotten speech in Florida. And while we're talking about Earth Day, there's a story within the story that's worth telling. And that is the story of the cretin who started Earth Day, Ira Einhorn. Do you know anything about the man who created Earth Day? He was as big a con man as Al Gore. His name was Ira Einhorn. He was known as the Unicorn Killer. Look him up. He's the American convicted of the murder of his ex-girlfriend, Holly Maddox. In 1977, his girlfriend, beautiful woman, disappeared following a trip to the apartment that she and Einhorn shared in Philadelphia. She went there to collect her things. They were breaking up. 18 months later, police found Holly's body partially mummified in a trunk in his closet. It had been packed with styrofoam, air fresheners, and newspapers. After he was arrested, Einhorn fled the country. Now, you know who helped him get out of the country? A Philadelphia district attorney, then a Democrat senator, then a Republican senator. Anyone remember his name? He helped Einhorn flee the country because he was loved by the liberal establishment in Philly. And he spent 23 years in Europe protected by the liberal establishment, including the French, before being extradited to the U.S. because of one brave district attorney in Philadelphia. She kept after him. Einhorn took a stand in his own defense, claiming his ex-girlfriend had been killed by the CIA, who framed him for the crime because he knew too much about the agency's paranormal military research. It was all a lie, of course. He was convicted and is currently serving a life sentence somewhere in America. His moniker, the Unicorn, came from his name Einhorn, which means unicorn in German. Now, what does it have to do with Earth Day? Ira Einhorn was an active participant in the first Earth Day event in Philly in 1970. He later claimed to have been instrumental in the creation of Earth Day and launching the event, but other event organizers dispute his account. Nevertheless, that's the man behind Obama's Earth Day plea on behalf of global warming, a day that he flew to Florida, spewing thousands of gallons of fumes from Air Force One. Okay, what more do I have to say about that? WABC Paul, fire away. You're on the Savage Nation.
Hi, Dr. Savage. I just wanted to ask you your opinion on that, but you just beat me to it. I saw it on the news this morning, and I just couldn't believe what I saw. He's gonna fly to Miami, and then his security detail is gonna transport him to the Everglades so he can give a speech about climate change. You know, it seems kind of counterproductive to me. I just don't understand it.
Counterproductive? How about a lying hypocrite who is an embarrassment for the world?
Well, I mean, of course. I'm not going to...
1,800 miles round trip, 9,180 gallons of fuel on Air Force One. How about that one?
He's going to lecture us.
How about that one? How does that work for you environmentalists out there? Do you feel good about having a liar and a hypocrite in the White House? He's actually a nice man. He's not a Muslim. He has a nice family. Ask John McCain. We had a chance to stop him. The man was never, ever qualified to be anything other than a community organizer. But I don't want to spend my time on that. He's going to come out here. He's here now. He gave a speech on rising sea levels, salt water seeping inland, threatening drinking water for Floridians, blah, 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 blah. Let me tell you something. As a person who has worked as a conservationist all of my adult life, which I have done so, I've done an awful lot of work rescuing rainforests, rescuing the folklore of rainforests. In fact, you don't know this part about me. I chained myself to trees back in the 60s to stop their destruction in places. Yes, I'm a certified, not environmentalist, because that word has negative connotations, rightly so. I'm a certified conservationist. So there's no one more qualified to talk about preserving what God has given us and protecting animals than I. I've done it. I live it. I eat it. I breathe it. But the fact of the matter is, this man is a lying hypocrite from the get-go. He is not qualified to speak about the environment because he abuses the environment every day of his life. That's the whole point. That's what we're trying to say to you. How the American people can put up with a fraud like this, I should say I don't know. I do know. All you got to do is say one word. Williams. Brian Williams. Brian Williams is not an anomaly in the American media. Brian Williams is the epitome of the American media. They're all Brian Williams. In fact, they should all wear a little button that says, "We are all Brian Williams." Every last one of them is nothing but a talking skirt. A talking skirt or a talking suit. It's because of them that the country is wrecked. Now, many of you say, come on, knock it off. The country's not wrecked. The economy's doing well. It's relatively peaceful in the country. What are you complaining about, huh? Well, that's for those of you who are half blind and half deaf and half dumb. Those rest of us who actually have two eyes and a full brain can see what's going on. And we see the tsunami that is rising above us, the tsunami of radical Islam that will engulf our children and our children's children. And while you're at it, why don't you tell us about the debt that your president has put us in that can never be repaid by printing money? So you think things are coming up roses, do you? Well, when you use too much fertilizer, eventually you poison the earth. Printing money is the equivalent of using too much fertilizer. This is the Savage Nation. I'll be right back. Be here or be nowhere.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now. 855-400-SAVAGE. 855-400-7282. Savage.
Hey, our Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com. The only company I trust for wealth insurance, gold and silver. Call 800-BUICOIN. I want to move you to another area right now without getting too agitated. Countdown to Mecca is the most brilliant novel I've ever written, and it's coming out in 3 weeks from St. Martin's Press. This is not a self-published book. This is by the most important talk show host in America, Michael Savage. And Countdown to Mecca is the last of a trilogy of novels. I will not write another one. I will not write another Jack Hatfield novel. That's it. The first two were really good. They were bestsellers. They're set in San Francisco. They've got the color of the streets. This is the best one of all with the best plot. And it's all about Iran getting the nuclear weapons that Obama's trying to give them. And there are characters in it that I've never used before. It's set in Israel, San Francisco, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan. It's set in many places. I'd like to read some of it to you, maybe tomorrow. There's a lot in here about the Mossad working with the U.S. military to bomb Mecca, and how Jack Hatfield hears about this plot and works feverishly to stop them from this crazy plot, knowing that it would set off World War III. It's a good book, a really good book, and I highly recommend that if you're interested in military affairs, if you're interested in conspiracies, if you're interested in just a good read, that you take a look at Countdown to Mecca, my new novel. Countdown to Mecca, New York Times best-selling author of A Time for War. I'm not in the mood to read from it right now. I've had too much stress today, and the stress was mainly electronic, nothing else. Systems failures 5 minutes before the show yesterday, systems failures today. They take their toll on a human being, and I can only do so much in one day. Meanwhile, I'm here, stressed out as can be. It's okay. I'm not complaining. It's just part of the business. But here's a good little piece for you. It was set in Israel now, in Countdown to Mecca. It's set at the U.S. radar station in Mount Keren, Israel. And I want to read to you about one of the military characters that I wrote into the book. It'll take a minute or two. It'll entice you. Colonel Tristan Ashlock was not a lunatic by any means. Now, he's the guy who's plotting to blow up Mecca. He was not criminally insane or pathological in his views of the world. He was an ardent American patriot who had spent his entire adult life wearing the uniform of the United States Army. Every male member of his family on his mother's side had worn that same uniform, dating back 5 generations to the Civil War, all of them graduating from the Virginia Military Institute near the top of their classes. Not one of his line had ever graduated, at the very top, however, until Tristan did so in 1977. His great-great-grandfather, William J. Smith, had been on the verge of doing so when the Commonwealth of Virginia voted to secede from the Union in the spring of 1861. But this was as close as anyone else with his blood had ever come to matching the achievement. Upon leaving VMI to fight for the Confederacy, the young lieutenant, William Bill Smith, had served briefly under General Bernard E. Bee before both were killed in action on the 21st of July at First Manassas. In death, Bill Smith left behind a pair of infant twin daughters, Eleanor and Sarah. It was from Sarah's line that Tristan Quentin Ashlock would emerge 4 generations later as the youngest of 4 sons, his older brothers all destined to give their lives either in the jungles of Vietnam or in clandestine military operations carried out during the Cold War. Their deaths, along with Tristan's genetic infertility, had assured that he would be the last of Sarah's line. Such were the laws of primogeniture. Today, Colonel Ashlock was 57 years old, with thick gray hair that he still wore closely cropped to his head. His penetrating eyes were the color of steel dust, and though his facial features had begun to sag a bit, he maintained the distinguished chiseled visage of the handsome warrior he had once been. He was a veteran of both Gulf Wars, the ongoing debacle in Afghanistan, and the recipient of the DSC, the Distinguished Service Cross. Though his service career had been well distinguished as a commander of troops in the field, he had made some socially critical errors during his climb up the chain of command, errors in the form of failing to keep his mouth shut at the appropriate times and failing to kiss the butts of the appropriate generals when it would have been prudent to do so, thus giving offense in all of the wrong military circles at all of the worst times.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282.
Blowing out 6,000 to 9,000 gallons of fuel to give a talk in Florida about the dangers of global warming. He won't call the 1915 Armenian massacre a genocide, which is a fact, while he calls weather changes, which are perfectly normal, global warming, which is not a fact, because he himself is an artifact. He's an artifact of the office of the presidency. We have no idea what's going on, do we? I'm a fan of the television show called Homeland. I've watched too many episodes to think that it's all fiction. If you haven't watched it, it's really basically a simple plot. An American soldier gets captured in Iraq. He's kept in captivity for 7 years. He's beaten to the point where they break him. They turn him into a Muslim. They make him a double agent. They release him back into America. And this ex-American soldier runs for office, and naturally he is elected because we love our war heroes. Meanwhile, he continues to pray to Mecca every day on a prayer rug in his basement, unbeknownst even to his wife and daughter. Meanwhile, he plots terrorist acts in America while he is a U.S. congressman. The one CIA agent who is onto him is convinced she is crazy by the other members of the CIA who put her in a mental hospital and subject her to criminal drugs and criminal electrotherapy. But she was right. He was a double agent all along. We have double agents operating at the highest level of American government, according to people who are in the intelligence services, let us say formally in the intelligence services, who see what's going on right in front of their eyes. There is no other explanation for what we're witnessing. ISIS rampaging without any American, let us say, real vociferous opposition. Bill Clinton calling ISIS a non-governmental organization and justifying what they're doing in a roundabout manner. Jeb Bush saying that NSA spying is a good thing. Do you have any idea what I'm talking with you about? It's called penetration. It's called penetration. It's called the taking over of a government from within. Not only did Bill Clinton call ISIS an NGO, legitimizing their rape, their pillaging, and their murder, but it seems that Bill Clinton was reaching out for a contract to add more money to his library. Listen to clip number 1 on the Savage Nation.
Arguably the most interesting non-governmental organization today, which proves the importance of inclusion by its shortcomings, but is formidable, is ISIS. ISIS is a terrorist organization, an NGO, trying to become a state. That is, they don't recognize any of the boundaries of the Middle Eastern countries as legitimate. They were all established, drawn largely by Westerners after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire in World War I.
So now we have the President of the United States being a propagandist for Iran and Bill Clinton being a propagandist for the ISIS organization, legitimizing them, calling them an NGO, and saying they're simply not recognizing what the West created in the Middle East. It seems that the Clintons have no bottom to their despicable natures It seems to me he's looking for a new contract. Listen to the next soundbite in the Savage Nation.
When they go capture a place,